Hello, so today what we're going to be doing is the meatballs. So these have got pork and then beef mince in them, which you can see that I've already prepped here. If you can't use pork, you could just use beef or a chicken mince or anything else that you are able to use. We have used Quorn in the past for vegetarians at school, and we've quite often found that it's quite a dry mixture. So if you are going to use Quorn, just make sure that you maybe add some more some more milk into your mixture, just so that you get that right consistency. As I say, we have found that it's quite a dry mixture otherwise, so you may have to play around with the quantities a little bit if you do adapt the recipe. The reason that we've got the pork in there is it's going to add the fat content is going to be slightly higher, and that's then going to give it a lot more taste in there as well, so that's the reason behind it. What we've tended to do at school with my year 10s is we get a free delivery of pheasant, thanks to the Food Teachers Centre that I'm a member of, and we've done pheasant meatballs with the pork as well, so you can adapt this really easily. So I've already prepped everything ready to go. So my meat mixture has been sitting there for 30 minutes. It did have a cover on it, so when you're leaving it, please make sure that you cover it. I've got my breadcrumbs here. Now it does say in the recipe that you need to use maybe ciabatta bread. I've actually done a little bit of a mixture of breads that we had sort of odds and ends left in our freezer. So we got some nice bread at the beginning of the week, and I've just used the ends of that. We also had some wholemeal bread, just normal sliced bread, and just whizzed that up in my food processor just till I get really fine breadcrumbs, and then just added the milk into that now. Okay, in this bowl I've got my garlic, my parmesan and my oregano. So that was the 3 pieces of garlic, so 3 cloves, 25 grams of parmesan and a ½ teaspoon of oregano. I've got my chopped mozzarella all set to go. Now the mozzarella is going to go inside your meat mixture. And then over here, hopefully you can see, I have got some bits for my sauce. Now the recipe has asked for a slightly different variation to this. So it's 2 cloves of garlic, tin of tomatoes, some red wine vinegar, and then some red wine and some sugar. We don't have any red wine vinegar in the house at the moment, so I've changed it very slightly again, just using what we've got in the house. And I'm going to do a very similar recipe to what I did for the lasagna with my sauce, but to make it then smooth, I'll then blend it so that I then get that smooth consistency that we're wanting. So I've got actually half an onion, 2 cloves of garlic, tin tomatoes, some red wine. I've got some tomato puree that I'm also going to add in, just ½ tablespoon, and go from there and kind of see if I can make a good sauce out of that. So you can adapt this really easily. It's a really good recipe for being able to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first start by getting my mixture together. So I've already, as I've said, I've already put that there for ½ an hour, and I've set that aside. I've already done my soaked bread, so if you're looking at the recipe, I've already done steps 1 and 2. So what I'm now going to do is, following on from step 2, I'm going to put in all of my ingredients into this big bowl. Bread. If you do prep your ingredients beforehand, it does make this bit so much easier. So do make sure that you are really having a go at that. going to try this with a spoon, but actually I think the best way that you can do this is with your hands. Yeah. So getting your hands in and really mixing everything together. So this is where you might find with your Quorn, you've maybe struggled a little bit. And you may need to add more liquid if you have used Quorn. Just wanting to make sure you really mix that up. What I'm also wanting to do is just add some pepper. And some salt. I'm not going to forget this time. And the last thing that I've then just got to add is my egg. Just making it easy for myself rather than mixing it and stirring it in. So the bread is going to help absorb some of that flavour and also the egg there as well. So you should have quite a wet consistency. You can probably hear the sloppiness of this as we go on. For those that have done Year 9 already, you'll notice this is a slightly different recipe to what we've been using at school. I just found this the other day and I thought it was looked like quite a nice recipe. So I thought I'd give it a go in the hope that we might then be able to use this at school later on. So I'm almost kneading it like I did with bread. And there we go, we've got that there. Bring my chopping board back in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to roughly divide the portions up. Now the recipe does say to 18, so that's half. We may not get 18. So you can do this more accurately. You could weigh out your meatballs so that you get them really, really accurate. Oh, I'm going to get 16. You don't want these burger sized. That'll be too big for what we're doing today. Just running out of space. Just making sure that they're all roughly the same sort of size. Now you quite often find with these sorts of red meats that we're using, so beef for example, you can serve these rare, medium rare. Now the only reason that you can do that with whole products is because the inside hasn't had oxygen to it, so the bacteria can't grow. So as soon as you start using something like mince, you do need to be making sure that you get these properly cooked. I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to take those out of there, because what I'm now going to do is just add in my cubes of mozzarella, cover that, and then pop that in there. That way then I know which ones have got the mozzarella in them and which ones don't. And there you have it, you've got all the meatballs. Some are slightly bigger than others still. So as I said, you could weigh out the mince exactly so that you get everything has got it the exact amounts. But that should be okay, because we're going to cook these a couple of times. Just a couple of questions for you, because these are going to go into the fridge and rest just for a little bit. Up to this point, this could be done in advance, so it could be done a couple of days in advance. What we've done previous lessons with certainly the year 10s, we've got to this point and we've then actually popped them into the freezer so that they can then just be pulled out the day before or the morning before their lesson, and then we cook them actually later on in the lesson, adding the sauce. So a couple of questions for you. There's something called the danger zone. What does this mean in terms of cooking? When we're actually cooking something, what temperature does it need to get to be safe to eat? And there's also something called a hot holding temperature, which caterers need to keep their food at above a certain temperature. What is this temperature? So the three questions again: what is the danger zone? What do we need to make sure that temperature is cooked to? And what is the hot holding temperature? I might just add in another one, is what temperature should your fridge be? So what temperature should your fridge be? So there's 4 questions there. I'm going to put those to one side and just chill them down. The other thing that you can be doing at this point is just washing up, making sure that everything is clean. We don't want to be having any of that cross-contamination. And then you can also then be preparing your sauce. So my meatballs have been in the fridge for just over an hour. This is the stage that you could have, if you've left them there and you've prepped these in advance, you could have put these in the fridge or the freezer. So the fridge could be there for a couple of days, 2 days ahead, no more. And then you could put these into the freezer as well. They do freeze better if they have cooked in advance, so you could cook them at this stage and then pop them into the freezer at that stage as well. All I'm going to be demonstrating is just the cooking of the meatballs and then the sauce. I'm not going to be preparing the spaghetti. I'll be doing that later for my dinner, but this is all done ahead before you then cook your spaghetti. Remember that your spaghetti only takes 8 to 10 minutes to cook, so this will all take a little bit longer. So, one tablespoon of oil into the frying pan and heating that up. So I'm just going to put that on really high to start with, and then I'm going to lower it down. So you're going to brown these meatballs first, and then you're going to put them back into another bowl. Remember, don't put them back into this bowl because that's had raw meat in it, and we want to prevent that from cross-contaminating. If you're not 100% sure what I mean by that word, cross-contamination, it'd be really good for you to look that up. There's something called the 4 C's, and certainly in year 7 or year 8 we look at the 4 C's bacteria bites video, so that's a really good one for you to have a look at. So this can be done in a frying pan or it can be done in a casserole dish. Okay, so all I'm wanting to do is just pop them into this, and they're starting to sizzle already. I'm going to do these in batches so that they've got space to move around bowl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just use another bowl for when they're cooked. So we're not wanting to cook these fully at this stage, we're just wanting to get them a nice brown colour. Watch fingers, please be very careful trying to turn these over. You don't want to burn any fingers. So you're just wanting to brown them all over, so keep them moving so you get that lovely golden colour all the way around. Once they're browned, just pop them out, and then I can start cooking the next ones. These ones should take a little bit quicker now that the pan is quite hot. Is all the meatballs have been browned. Okay, so just making sure that they're browned on all sides, and then we can just set them aside. What I'm then going to do is there was quite a bit of oil in there already. I'm actually going to add just half a tablespoon. Now it does say in the recipe to add a lot more than that, but I would hesitate against using too much. I'm just going to add my onions. So we're now just getting all that lovely juice that the meat has left. then going to help with the flavouring of our sauce. Now I've turned my frying pan right down, so it's actually on 1 at the moment. Because it's so hot from the previous cooking of the meat, it means that the pan is staying quite hot to cook everything. Turning that up just to cook my garlic. Now what you will have noticed is I've added in, so whilst I was crushing it, I was then just adding in some of the other bits that hadn't quite got crushed. Remember, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to blend this so it then becomes a smooth sauce, so it doesn't need to worry too much about doing everything else. So that's been cooking for a minute or so. What I'm then going to do is, if you at this stage want to add the alcohol, because that then just burns off and cooks off as it goes. So I'm just going to turn that right up. And again, because we're using the same pan that we've used for cooking the meat, we're deglazing that pan, which means that we really get all of those juices going. So I'm just going to allow that to cook for a little bit. If you are adding your vinegar and sugar, that's to go in at this stage as well. I'm going to add some of the tomato puree in at this stage, and I may just add just a teaspoon of sugar into that, even though I haven't done the vinegar. And then I will then add my tinned tomatoes. So you can see already that sauce has really started to reduce right down. I'm just going to clear up my mess. And it's started to thicken now as well. I'm just going to add my tomatoes. Now again, we didn't manage to get tin tomatoes, chopped tomatoes, we've just got plum tomatoes. That's absolutely fine, it works just as well. All you then do is just with your spoon, is just break them up in the saucepan. But again, because we're going to be blending it, I don't need to worry too much at this stage. I think a really good thing with this, same with lasagna or even bolognese, is that a lot of this can be done in advance. You can get all of your washing up done, and then it means that everything can then just go into the oven, which means that later on you've got less washing up to do. So if you are really busy and time is against you, these sorts of things can be done in advance. Bring that up to the boil, and then I'm going to let it simmer. So we'd let that simmer for 10 minutes. I'm going to just blend this up before it gets to that where I leave it. So I'm just going to bring it off at that point. Now when you're using one of these, please make sure that you go right into the saucepan and then turn it on. If you turn it at an angle or you turn it on before you do anything else, you're going to end up with tomato all over your nice kitchens. Using these blenders is something that we do in year 7. When we do our soup or our fruit smoothies. So do have a go at using these. Just going to put that back onto and that can then reduce down. So I haven't necessarily got all of the big bits of onion and garlic, but I've got quite a lot of it, which means that I've then got a much smoother sauce. You could at this point have added, before you blended it, you could have added some other bits and some vegetables. Maybe you could have put some spinach in there, some carrots and things like that, just to add more nutritional value. And obviously with children often not wanting some of those veg, it sometimes is a good way of hiding different vegetables just to get a bit more nutrition into them. Make sure that you season as well. And the other thing that you can be doing is also tasting as you go. So tasting your sauce just means that you can then see what other flavours need to be incorporated. Maybe you do need to be adding a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper. So all you can do is, if you watch any of the chef shows that are on various different platforms, but if you look at MasterChef, Great British Menu, anything like that, what they quite often do is they've got a teaspoon or something. You just taste a little bit of your sauce. And then add a little bit more seasoning if it's needed. Just make sure that you don't then double dip, so you don't put in your spoon back in once you taste it. Make sure that you do wash that spoon before you then go back into your sauce again. So because what I'm going to be doing is cooking this later on rather than now, and using this now, I'm going to let that sauce reduce down, and you can see that I've now got an oven-proof dish that I'm going to be using. Decides to stop spitting at me, there we go. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put my meatballs into here and then cover it in the sauce. And then what I'm going to do is, when it's dinner time, I'm then going to be putting it into the oven instead. And again, just make sure that everything is cleared down, and that will then go into the oven for 20 minutes. Okay, so for 20 minutes that will then go into the oven. This again is a stage that you can do well in advance. So I'm now doing this in the morning, so it's then ready for dinner tonight. And again, it just means that you can clear the decks, and it's a much easier way of working. So I'll do that. You may find that there's some juice at the bottom of your meatballs. That's fine, you want that, so do make sure that you're putting that into your sauce, because that's all flavouring there as well. You can start to see that now. Just pour all over. And then all I'm going to do is let that cool down, ready for later for dinner. Once that's cooled down, I can put a lid on the top, and I can then put that into the fridge. Please don't put it into the fridge whilst it's still this hot. That will then bring your fridge temperature up, and that could then put it into that danger zone that we were talking about earlier, that you hopefully have researched. Now it's just a case of washing up, making sure that you clear down and put things away to where they belong. And enjoy when you start tasting it. Remember, this is the stage. This will then go into the oven for 20 minutes at 180 degrees, and we're wanting this to get to the temperature in the core as well, so it is wanting to make sure that you get it up to a good temperature. Again, you've hopefully looked at what that will be. And then once that's then been in there for the allocated time, I can then cook my spaghetti. So please make sure that you're serving everything hot and to the temperature that it's needed. Enjoy!